Today is the 18th of September 2012. We're in Troy, New York doing a home interview. My name is Wayne Clark. I'm with the New York State Military Museum in Saratoga Springs. Sir, for the record, would you please state your full name and date and place of birth, please?
William Arnold Peake, born June 22nd, 1924 in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
Now, you mentioned shortly after that you came to the United States.
Yes, I came to the United States as a baby in September of that year, 1924.
And whereabouts did you settle?
Watervliet, New York.
Did you attend school in Watervliet?
A short period of time. Most of my schooling was in Lansingburg, Brunswick and Lansingburg area.
Okay. And you mentioned dropping out of high school.
Yes.
Was that your sophomore year? Or?
Oh, that was my senior year.
Oh, your senior year.
Senior year to go in the Army.
Now, did you enlist in the Army or were you drafted?
Well, that's a story in itself. I wanted to enlist in November of 1942. I went to the draft board and they told me to go home and spend the holidays with my parents and they would draft me in January.
Mm-hmm.
January came, they didn't hold to that, and I went after them again, and I went in February.
Let me go back a little bit. Do you recall where you were and what you were doing when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I was on a hike in back of Troy, and when I came back into the village of Lansingburg, there was all sorts of people talking about it, and honestly, I didn't know where Pearl Harbor was, like many of us.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very, very frightening experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that point in my life, I said, I will serve.
Mm-hmm. Did your life change much after that?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It's time of growing up and growing up fast.
Mm-hmm.
I never read so many newspapers.
Mm-hmm. Do you recall rationing?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a little of it, I remember gas rationing, and what really remember most about rationing is the black market, and that used to disturb me no end.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what was going on?
Well, if you wanted gasoline for a price, you could get it.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted butter, you could get it under the counter. If you wanted meat, you could get it, but it would cost you more.
Mm-hmm.
My father was in the steel industry, and they gave him privileges with the gasoline to get back and forth to work. And he had so much gas that he just couldn't use it all. And he would give his ration tickets to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought that was right. I didn't like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. And you went into the Army.
Yes.
And you enlisted in the Army?
Yes.
And why did you pick the Army?
I don't know. I didn't want to go in the Navy. That didn't appeal to me. I probably would have, if I thought about it more, I probably would have tried to get into the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like the idea of the Army. For whatever reasons, I really can't explain.
And whereabouts did you go for basic training?
Well, I was enlisted. We went down to Camp Upton in Long Island and was shipped from there to Camp Upton, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Camp McCain, Mississippi, named from John Cain's grandfather.
Oh, I see.
And was a brand new facility, a lot of mud and all that sort of thing, and we built a lot of bridges and sidewalks and whatever. But I was assigned to the Signal Corps.
Now, after you completed your basic, did you go on to another military school?
Yeah, I went, I took, while I was in Camp McCain, they assigned me to a radio school. And that was the one thing in my life I did not want to do. So I balked at every day. And while I was there, a gentleman came in and asked for a couple of volunteers, and he had a small device in his hand, and he wanted people to learn this small device. And I volunteered along with my buddy. It was a small cipher machine.
Oh.
And I got into cryptography from that point on.
Mm-hmm.
When we left, after McCain, we went through the hills of Tennessee, of course, and the maneuvers and practice out there, and went on to Fort Jackson for advanced training.
Mhm.
There, myself, I became the lead cryptographer in the Signal Corps for that 87th Division. There was only 2 of us, so it wasn't easy. It wasn't hard to be the
Oh.
lead.
Now, what rank did they make you?
Well, I advanced through the ranks to Master Sergeant. During a period of time in Fort Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
Message came in, I decoded it, and I brought it to the colonel. And in that message, I read it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It said they wanted someone in Army headquarters in Memphis, Tennessee. And I handed him a message. I said, Colonel, I want to go. He read the message, said, pack your bags. And I went to Memphis, Tennessee, in the 2nd Army headquarters. There, I, of course, did the regular work, and we were training officers as they come in from the field. They would get 2 or 3 months training in cryptography and the devices that we had, and we'd send them back to their units to do that work.
And how long did you stay in the States?
I never went overseas.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No, that is a story. All my life, I regretted not going overseas. I was put in a position that if I did go, I would be in a safe haven. I'd be in a position where there was no danger because of my work I was doing.
Sure.
They would not allow me to be captured or any of this sort of thing. And all my life, I would never admit that I was even in the service. I felt terrible that I did not go overseas. And this display that you see in this here,
Yep.
some time ago, my daughter came with this,
Mm-hmm.
and she gave it to me. And she said, Dad, I never saw you stand up when they'd asked for veterans to stand at any ceremonies. When they'd asked the Army to stand or the Navy to stand, she never stood up. And she's like, I never could understand why. And I told her that I felt so bad that all these fellows were over there protecting me, and I was here, had a pretty nice job.
Yeah, but you were doing something that was considered vital to national security, too.
But I didn't look at it that way. But what I did look at, what my daughter said to me, changed my life. She said, Dad, you did what you were told to do. And I never looked at it that way. And then when I had an opportunity to fund the Patriot flights to fly World War II veterans to Washington, I told them in every flight, this is how I pay you back for what you did for me. And I truly, truly, that's my heart. This is wonderful. But it doesn't compare with some of being, all my colleagues that were in, I went through training with, were in the Battle of the Bulge. I could have been there, but I wasn't. But getting them to see the memorial in Washington was my opportunity to say thank you to them.
And when did your wife mentioned you became a citizen. How did that come about? Was that
Very
during?
interesting story.
Was that during the war?
Oh yes. I was in Fort Jackson doing this secret work. It was just 2 of us in the 87th Signal Corps. And I was with this top secret piece of material. It was brand new equipment came into us, and 2 of us were guarding this. We spent 12 hours each with this equipment. One morning I was finishing up, and 2 big MPs came. And I always say they were 9 foot tall, and they all weighed 300 pounds. And they had badges all over them and guns. That's the way I viewed it. Well, I was terrified. And they took me. What on earth did I do? Because I'm playing around with secret. I figured the firing squad is ready for me. And I didn't know why.
They didn't say anything. They just
No,
said you'd come.
they didn't know. Of
Okay.
course. So he took me to the colonel. And I went in his office, and he said to me, Sergeant, he said, you're not a citizen. You're not supposed to be doing this work. I said, Colonel, you're the one that assigned me. I didn't do this. When the FBI did the investigating of me, they missed the fact that I wasn't a citizen. 1 week later, I was in the courtroom in Columbia, South Carolina, being sworn in as a citizen
Ah.
of this country. That is amazing for me.
Uh-huh.
When I went in, they knew I wasn't a citizen
Sure.
because they called me and asked me if I wanted it. It took 1 year. And I didn't think of it after that.
Yeah.
I needed these assignments and just did what I had to do. But it didn't take long to make me a citizen.
Mm-hmm. So everything was fine after that.
Oh, yes. Yes. But I think that's a wonderful little story.
Mm-hmm. And did you see any USO shows or anything like that when you were in?
Yeah, we of course, in the work I did, we were, and I hate to say this, we were kind of special. We were
Mhm.
treated differently. And so we had opportunities to see things that the poor guy that was down in the trenches didn't get an opportunity to see.
Mhm.
And I saw movie actresses and actors that came through, and
Mm-hmm.
not really terribly impressed with it. I didn't go out of my way to see them. I had too much to do to
Mhm.
think about that, to be honest with you.
Now, did you do all of your work on post or?
Oh, yeah. Well, I did some work off post in the Ninth Corps. I went up and did some training with some wax.
Mm-hmm.
And that was interesting duty for a short period of time. I taught at Fort Monmouth and I taught at Camp Crowder,
Mm-hmm.
both Signal Corps
Okay.
units.
So you were always uniformed. You never.
Oh, no,
Work.
always uniform.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Now, once in a while we sneak off base in civilian clothes, but
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't that wasn't something we were supposed to do.
Anything that comes to mind that messages you received, really national security or importance that.
There was one incident that always sticks in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lieutenant that worked with us that was born and raised in China. He was an American citizen. He wasn't
Mhm.
Chinese, but he spoke Chinese along with his English. When the bomb went off in Japan, got that bomb, he came in and told us it was going to happen. Now, how he knew that, he said there was something big going to happen in Japan. And after when he came in, he said they dropped the atomic bomb. And I don't think any of us knew what an atomic bomb was. We knew basically an atom, but we didn't know
Sure.
what was going on. And but I always remembered that. And he used to keep us posted of a lot of things that were going to happen because he would get it through the Chinese embassies or wherever he got this information. But he got it, and he was come in and tell us. Of course, we were working in a secret environment, and you don't say anything, so
Sure.
we never shared it with anyone. But it was kind of it was a scary time for us, I think, for me,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what I knew, and I'd be out alone some nights, and I was always looking over my shoulder. Of course, you're a young kid and impressionable, and you just, and the real world was a little different than what you perceived.
Well, that was pretty good to become a master sergeant in a short period of time like
Yes.
that.
I worked very hard.
What type of housing did you have? Did you have your own room, or were you in a barracks environment?
Of course, when you're in a barracks, you'd have your own room. But after I got married, I lived off base
Oh, I see.
with my wife in an apartment. And
Mm-hmm.
but our hours were pretty good then. War was winding down. There wasn't much activity. But during the height of the war, there was a lot of messages and I worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for
Oh,
months
okay.
and months and months.
So you didn't have any additional duties? You didn't have to pull any kind of
Oh, no.
charge of quarters or anything? Or?
No, nothing like that. In fact, because our hours were so crazy, we could go and, because you had civilian cooks in the mess hall, and go eat any time we wanted,
Mhm.
whatever we wanted. It was good duty, but hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Hard work. And not only in the training of, I was like, say, staff or tech sergeant training captains.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be stressful. And at the end of that period of time, of course, you'd have to rate that person. And that's not the easiest thing in the world for a young kid.
Uh-huh.
really.
Did you encounter any problems with any
Yes.
bad ratings or?
I had one lieutenant that I think he resented me. He didn't like where he was. He didn't want to listen. And I remember I went in one morning and there was a message there, and it was a simple confidential message. It was easy to decipher.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, I turned to the lieutenant and I said to him, I'd like to do this one. And he snapped around. He must have had a bad night or something. And he said to me, "You do it, Sergeant." And I said, okay. So I did it.
Mm-hmm.
When we finished, he came to me and he said, "I hope that little innocence back then won't affect what you have to say about me." I said, "I just call it as I see it."
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whatever mark he might have had on his record for that, because he wasn't a very polite person.
Mm-hmm. Now, did your wife work during that period of time?
Oh, a little bit, but not really. She worked downtown in a little store for a lady that asked her to help her out. So
Mm-hmm. Now,
we could have used it.
were you guys able to shop at the commissary for groceries, or didn't they have a commissary?
No, we
then?
didn't have that available.
No. Okay. And when did you get discharged?
12, December the 8th, 1946. And as I said, that was my wife's birthday.
Oh. Now, did they try to get you to stay in the military?
Oh, yeah. Yes, when I was in Fort Monmouth, they tried to get me to stay, and I didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was offered a job as a civilian doing pretty much the same work. And I had really, at that point in my life, I'd had enough military,
Mm-hmm.
and being young and not really focused well, I wanted to get on with my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I look back, and many times I said, I think I made a mistake back then, but my life turned out okay after that. I mean, I did fairly well.
I'm sure the CIA would have picked you up in a heartbeat back then.
Well, I would guess, though, in all fairness, my colleagues, there was a lot of us around at that time, because every division had 2 or 3, and there was lots of cryptographers around.
Mm-hmm.
I happened to be at a different level, but because we were doing some work trying to break codes of other nations. And some of our people who were assigned with us were trained in Washington and breaking codes.
Were you involved with breaking codes too?
I was involved in helping them break
I see.
codes. And we would be working on maybe 3 words. Now, I was not an expert in that by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was discharged as an 808 at the time. That was your MOS. And that was a cryptanalyst. And I thought that was very unfair to the good cryptanalyst, because I was a long way from being able to do that.
Okay.
I could help.
Now, when you were discharged, did you make use of the GI Bill at that point?
Yes, I did some schooling with that. I've gone to school all my life, one way or another. And the GI Bill helped me go through some training with machine shop practices. And I did that because I was in the steel industry and I wanted to know a little bit about how steel reacts under certain conditions. So I took those courses to do that. I spent about 2 years there. That was the school that was a forerunner of Hudson Valley. That's
What was that called back then?
Veterans Vocational School.
Okay.
It's on 7th Avenue in Troy.
I think they have, I know it's affiliated with Hudson Valley, the Educational Opportunity Center, where they teach trades. I know they used to teach office skills, and I went through a welding course over at Hudson Valley through them many years ago now.
Yeah.
But yeah. Now, did you join any organizations like the Legion?
No, because as I told you, I never would admit I was even in the service, because, and not that I didn't want to, and until this came in my life, I felt so inadequate to be around those fellows that served in the islands or the Battle of the Bulge or
Well, there were.
Invasion of Italy, and here I am, had a plum job, and I don't belong in that group. I don't belong in that.
Well, you would be amazed at how many veterans I've interviewed that stayed stateside. A lot of people, because you had people in the military police taking care of POWs coming to
Right.
the States, and you know, they needed people to operate the Army bases back here and the air bases, etc. So a lot of the veterans we've interviewed stayed stateside during the war.
Well, I think because I trained too, I had some really good friends that I trained through, we were together in Camp McCain and then on to Jackson. And our group that I was with, we did the advanced work. When we moved out of Camp McCain, we were the first ones to get into the field. And when we were leaving there and going to Jackson, we were the first ones to go into Fort Jackson to make sure we got everything set up for them. So we were kind of a tight-knit. There was 11 of us, and I was the leader of this 11 group, and we were very tight. And when I left Memphis, to go to Memphis was tough. It was hard to leave. They were like my brothers.
Yeah.
And some of them didn't come back. And it really has had a big effect on my life, not going there.
Now, did you stay in contact with anyone you were in the service with?
They're all gone now, but I have to give that to my wife. She made the contact. She wrote the letters and sent the cards, and I took all the glory, but she kept track of it. But they're all gone now.
Okay.
I'm the last. I don't have any friends at all. They're all gone.
Okay. And, well, you sort of touched on this, but how do you think the service changed or affected your life?
I think the Army saved my life. I was brought up in a dysfunctional family. I had no rules. I could do anything I wanted. I didn't do anything bad. I always, as a young fellow, I always went to church. In a family of 7 youngsters, I was the only one that did that. And I think that was the only stabilizing thing I had in my life as I grew up. And when I went into the Army, for the first time in my life, someone was saying, you can't do something. This is what you need to do. And I'll always be grateful for my time in the service. And then when I got married, I've told this to any numbers of people. My life began the day I got married. We were in the service. I was in the service, of course.
Now, did you have any brothers in the service?
I had a brother in the Navy. He was in the South Pacific. I had another brother that entered just as the war ended, and he was in Panama. He was in ordnance, and I'm not sure the one that was in the Navy was some kind of gunner or whatever. I'm not sure what he did.
Are they still living?
The one that was in Panama, he lives in Florida. Been there many years. He's 90. And the brother that was in the Navy just passed away 2 months ago.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Okay, and anything else that you'd like to touch on that we didn't cover? Anything that comes to mind?
No, other than, as I said, the Army was a life-changing event for me, and every minute I was in, I was grateful to everyone that disciplined me. From the first sergeant I ran into it, I thought he was going to kill me. And it was, and to the major that I worked with for several years, it was just an absolute prince and my friend.
Okay. And you mentioned getting married. How many children?
We have 4 children. None served in the service. They've all done quite well. None of them live here. They all live somewhere else. One in South Carolina. She worked for the court systems with the Social Security people that are applying for benefits that have been refused. She works in the court system for that. Works directly with the judges. I have a son that he's in the steel industry, he manages a plant in Dunkirk and one in Titusville. and he works out of Bridgeville, Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
I have a son that's a pastor down in Binghamton,
Mhm.
and I have a daughter that she works a little bit part-time, but her husband is a electrical engineer with Xerox, and he does very well.
Hmm. How many grandchildren?
9.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not responsible for that.
Now, when did you end up retiring?
In 1985.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your interview.
Well, I hope that some young fellows see this,
Mhm.
will inspire him to join some service.
Okay.
That's the only reason why I sit here.
Okay. Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.